For anybody who may end up watching this, because it'll get posted, of course, this is a trial. First time trying live. So apologize if things are clunky. Hopefully, you guys check this out. If you're not here live, don't have an opportunity to check this out live. Hopefully, we might get a couple of folks to join. And if so, we're going to talk a little bit about the playoff games that are taking place. I want to share some thoughts on Cards HQ. That's Geoff Wilson, Sports Card Investors' new card shop, which is getting ready to go live or open up in the next couple of weeks. As somebody who has invested in small business, small business owner myself, I've invested in other small businesses as a lender and kind of give you some perspectives there. So, yeah, we'll give this just a quick moment. For anybody who's probably seeing this after the fact, the Chiefs just scored. They are now winning against the Bills. So we are watching that kind of in the background. So if you see me turn my head this direction, that's what I'm quickly looking at is the game. But we've never done live, so this is a bit of an experiment. Check out, the whole YouTube live situation. As I mentioned, I'm not necessarily expecting much. I will share my sentiments here in just a moment. If you are here, hit up the chat. Let me know that you're here. Appreciate anybody who is able to check this out live with us. And yeah, I'll share some thoughts related to Cards HQ here in just one moment. So for anybody who may join, are you guys, who you rooting for? We've got KC, we've got Buffalo. KC's winning by 3, 13-10. Been an interesting football experience here this playoff season. So, all right, well, let me just jump into some thoughts. Use this more of a actual video. And then if we get anybody, joining live, sharing some thoughts, comments, they can share their thoughts, and we'll shout them out as they share comments. But again, for folks that maybe don't know me, this is my second year doing sports card space or sports card YouTube content. I have been an investor in sports cards for 40 years, a collector for 40 years. At times, we've done, I've been a dealer and sold sports cards. I flipped sports cards over on ComC. Really enjoy that. It's been a fun experience going through kind of a full year of ComC. And, as somebody who's also invested, just generally speaking, invested into small businesses and been a small business owner myself. I'm an active small business owner. I'm an active investor in small businesses. We got some thoughts as it relates to Geoff Wilson's new project. And I'm going to call it a passion project from Geoff's perspective. I think in so many respects, he's kind of signified or indicated that it is a passion project from his perspective. And, for me, it's an interesting take on, what somebody would want to do in the year 2024 related to the sports card space. Geoff has gone on record through many videos, and the thumbnail to this video, he's obviously, I pulled over a picture of him holding up a sign saying that it's a $3 million sports card shop. And, the $3 million, that would be, essentially startup and carrying costs for a couple of months. If he is seeking funding, which there's a good chance that he is, as many small business owners, seeking funding is absolutely something that you want to do. There's tax benefits for you to do such. But, he and his two business partners, unfortunately, I don't know either of their names. I have not been following that closely, but, he and his business owners $3 million is a lot of money in the current environment to be spending on a facility, albeit a facility that it appears he will be moving his social media presence, the sports card investor studios into. My assumption is they'll be moving any personnel associated with market movers. But generally speaking, those are going to be their own businesses. Yes, they might be housed in the same building, but they're generally going to be their own businesses. And they'll be treated as such. Ultimately, the revenues that they're making, generally won't go over to the sports card shop. The sports card shop will stand on its own. It's a three-legged beast, meaning that there's three owners. Those owners, Geoff Wilson, unless he's just the most generous person in the world, he won't be taking, generally speaking, revenues from his other businesses to, use as a lifeline or as a lending source for the sports card space, the sports card shop space. The sports card shop itself is going to have to manage itself and essentially be successful on its own. So $3 million, pretty big number, but I don't think, I think the $3 million is probably clickbaitish. There might be $3 million spent, but $3 million of that will come from the sports card space. And then depending upon how much square footage is used by the market movers team, they'll pay a portion of the startup costs related to the building, the creation of the offices, internet, the setup of the internet, setup of IT, those sort of things. They'll pay a portion of it from, their revenues. The sports card investor, social media presence, they'll pay a portion of that startup cost out of their revenues. There may be a parent company that Geoff has or that they're working underneath. But generally speaking, the three business owners that are associated with the sports card shop, they won't be fitting the bill for these other companies. So it generally will come down to square footage and the amount of square footage for one business entity. That's how much they'll contribute as it relates to startup costs related to building out the facility. Now, then there's going to be startup costs, which are completely unique to building up the sports card space. There's various, permits and various fees that you have to take on from a federal and state perspective. There's going to be inventory that's purchased. I think that they've made references that they've spent upwards of $1 million in sports card inventory, whether that's boxes, sports card singles, whatever it is. There's upwards of $1 million that they've spent in that space, which is a pretty staggering amount of money. And then there's going to be carryover costs. They've got employees that are going to be dedicated to the sports card store. Those employees won't necessarily commingle, or I shouldn't say commingle because they might interact on a daily basis, but the funding of those employees don't necessarily get paid for out of the media side, social media side, from an ad revenues, affiliate marketing that they're doing in those spaces. That's not necessarily paying for the employees on the sports card shop side. So startup costs will be commingled, I guess, is kind of the key thing. So if they're talking a $3 million number, I think conservatively, you could probably estimate that there's about 80%. It could be less than that, could be 50%. But we don't know. You'd have to really understand the business plan. You'd really have to understand how much square footage is being used for each of the various companies. But I think it's probably a very conservative number to say that 80% of the startup costs of that $3 million that's being kind of floated around from Geoff and the team, that probably only about 2.4 million of those are being associated or tied to the sports card shop itself. So take that with a bit of a grain of salt. Sometimes when you see those $3 million numbers, again, that's just clickbaitish type material. And I'm not calling them out on that. That's not necessarily me being negative. It's ways to get eyeballs. Now, it could be a full $3 million. Maybe they've come out and shared some additional details. And then there's fees that these other businesses are taking on top of it. But I would generally tend to believe that if $3 million is the total startup costs, a good portion of that is, or a certain portion of that will come from these other businesses. Okay, so $3 million, 2.4. Let's put an estimation that 80% of that $3 million is truly earmarked for the sports card shop, or I should just say trading card shop, because they're going to carry Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, Lorcana, and other products. So from a trading card shop perspective, that's going to be, let's just estimate $2.4 million. Interesting thing, $2.4 million from a sports card build out perspective. You know, the next thing that you'd have to take a look at is the terms. If they are getting loans, which at $2.4 million, whether Jeff is supplying some of that 2.4 million, all of that 2.4 million, more than likely that's not the case. They're going to want to take loans. There's tax advantages to do so. But $2.4 million is probably a hybrid model that they're going to go with, where a certain amount of the funds are going to come from loan structure, from traditional banks, other lending institutions, maybe some private equity. And my knowledge base really comes from the private equity side, with small business, helping small business with loans that they've been unable to get, to assist with paying employees, or buying additional inventory. And so I've played a little bit in that space, helping small business out. And so that's why some of this is a relevant perspective, from my point of view. Um, but some of that will come from, you know, what they're going to need just from a carryover, or from a startup perspective. $2.4 million is a staggering amount of money. They're going to need to be able to carry a certain amount of that over the next couple of months just to pay employees. I'm sure that they've been paying employees as they are in preparation for the actual official launch of Cards HQ. And so with that, you know, it's interesting. Huddle Cards collection, about 10 miles from my house, will be interesting to see. First of all, Huddle Cards collection, thank you for joining. Hopefully, you're still in the lobby. Just seeing that. But yeah, 10 miles from your house. I've been to Atlanta a few times. There's a large telecommunications company in Atlanta that has a fairly large campus. I've been to their campus a number of times, with a prior business that I worked with, north of Atlanta. The interesting thing, Huddle, is there a marketplace that is flourishing that much in the sports card trading card space? I'm curious. So when we think about, if my estimations would be correct, and there's a $2.4 million build out and carrying costs. If you take a 10-year loan, and the way how small business works, 10-year loan, between 3 and 10 years, it's kind of an intermediate loan structure. And Jeff probably has enough connections to establish a 10-year note. And again, assuming he's not funding a portion of this himself, I'm sure it's a hybrid model. They're funding a certain amount of this out of pocket, and then they're taking loans for a portion of this. But if there's 10 years, quick math in my head, at $2.4 million, you would need to be generating over 10 years. It's fairly easy math. You need to generate $2.4 million in revenue every single year to pay $240,000 of profit margin, or profit margin before you pay the lenders back. So that means that you paid for your employees, you paid for your inventory, you've paid for taxes and various things. Most small business, and not retail and not restaurants, but most small business average between 7 and 10%. Google, if you just Google average small business profit margins, 7 and 10% is what you'd find. That means that they would have to generate $2.4 million in business as the sports card entity every single year. Again, they're not going to be commingling the sports card investor revenues to fund the sports card space. It's just not how business works. And they're not going to be using market movers to fund the sports card space. Now, Jeff may choose to do so. He may choose to take those funds, move them to himself, and move them into the business. different discussion. But interesting to think that you're going to have to, in essence, if $2.4 million is the startup cost, they're going to have to generate 2.4 million annually if they need to pay back $240,000 to return some of that to the investors or the banks or the lending institutions. Huddle, I think it would have better if it was closer to the stadium. Yeah, if they're not near, again, I know Atlanta just well enough that if they're not near the stadiums, and I forget the community, Dunwood, Dooneywood, Burke, something up there. It's up near like where Atlanta Athletic Club is. Cox Communications has a campus up there. There's a big shopping industry up there. I've spent a lot of time up there, and so if they're up in the suburbs, no offense, Huddle, but traffic in Atlanta sucks, and so I don't see it as a space where many folks are going to want to fly into Atlanta to go visit this card shop. Just because it's got the makings to be one of the biggest card shops in America or the world. Like it's just not an easy, it's not, first of all, it's not a draw to go to Atlanta. And then second of all, it's not the reason, you're going to leave the downtown city center if you're going for, say, a Braves baseball game or a Hawks or a Falcons game. You're not going to leave those areas to go check out this sports card shop. So yeah, being closer to the stadium center or city center would definitely have been a better selection. So it's near Cobb Galleria. Okay, I think I know where Cobb Galleria is. It's again, suburbs. So will they generate enough traffic? And is there enough business inside the Atlanta marketplace above and beyond whatever they can do from an online selling perspective to generate upwards of $2.4 million of revenue if they have to pay back their lenders over a 10-year period of time, or if they want to see a return on their investment over a 10-year period of time? That's the million-dollar question. And I struggle with, they're going to have the ability to do that. And, by the way, I want them to be successful. I genuinely do. I think it's good for the sports card space if they are successful. I think it's a positive thing. I think it's a positive thing for them. I want them to be successful as individuals or as a business entity. But, greater than that, I want them to be successful because it really drives positive momentum in the sports card space if they can be successful. And so I wish them all the luck. But, if they have to create $2.4 million in revenue, they're trying to go big and they're spending, at least that's how they're presenting themselves, is that they're spending. They're going to need to go big, and they're going to need to go big in ways that anybody who sees this may not be familiar with. There's a book I read, a business book some time ago called Blue Ocean Strategies. They're going to need to create their own blue ocean, which is a new marketplace in different ways that aren't necessarily being thought of today or being capitalized or utilized today to generate that type of money. The store is 2 miles from, okay. Yeah, no, Geoff appears to be intelligent when it comes to business. And my guess is they've done some sort of analysis of how much foot traffic. Certainly their landlord and whoever they're buying through or leasing the place through, they're going to have their own data and try and really sell that the facility that they're choosing to lease has a certain amount of foot traffic that they can try and hit the revenues that they need to hit. But it's $2.4 million is a staggering amount of money. Geoff's going to capitalize because if he can move the market movers team, I'm not sure how big that team is, he can move them into the building. Sports card investor team, that sounds like they're creating a studio there. I think that was announced on one of his videos. Geoff's got the ability to have certain advantages that maybe the other two owners don't, because again, there's there's three main owners that we've been publicly made aware of through how this has all come together. Yeah, 24/7 online. You know, we have a 24/7, couple of 24/7 marketplaces that move a lot of product. That's called eBay. That's called ComC. You can buy and sell and list cards on those marketplaces fairly regularly. Obviously, ComC has some structure around it that, unless it's in your inventory, you can't list them at all hours of the day until it's available to you for you to list. But they're going to have to tap into that market. And really, if you're selling 24/7, you're really selling on the other side of the world. And is there a marketplace in places like India to make it reasonable to be open 24/7 or to sell 24/7, especially in kind of some of the terms that they've talked about, where there's possibly people live in the store, trying to peddle product from the store 24/7. If that's truly what their market analysis is, you know, how many people in India are collecting sports cards and American sports? China, there's a certain amount. Obviously, we know that because a number of cards there's a whole system in China as far as opening product, reselling product in China. So there's a certain amount of volume there. Japan and some of those markets. Europe, the markets are a little bit different. Of course, it's not necessarily directly on the other side of the world from where Florida is. They'd be really tapping into like the middle of the hour, or the middle of the night hours would be more the India and Chinese markets. So 24-hour selling, will it last? We're going to see, right? It'd be interesting to see what this rollout looks like. Being in Denver, kind of looking forward towards, how they're going to be selling. I'll be looking from afar as a third party, no different than other people on the other side of the world. But yeah, I don't know that I see this strategy that is so much different for them to be able to come in year one and try and create the type of revenue that they need to make to get a rate on their return or a return on their investment, or to pay back the type of lenders, assuming that they're somewhere between 2.4 and $3 million as far as total startup and carrying costs. As a small business owner and as a lender, I've looked at a lot of plans for small businesses, and there's a certain amount of carrying costs that are covered into a small business startup plan of record. And they're going to have to think about some of those sort of things. And I'm sure, if they're being genuine and honest in a $3 million evaluation as far as dollars spent or projected dollars spent, some of that's going to be in that overall cost. So football game, apologize. No updates. We're at a commercial. Not sure what the game's looking like, but I've said it. I want the sports card. I shouldn't say the sports card investor team. I want the Cards HQ team to be wildly successful. I think it's going to be needed for the hobby. There's nuance we won't ever understand within any business, any private business. You'd expect that they shouldn't be sharing all the nuance. But we can look from afar and come up with some basic estimations. And hopefully that's the picture we've painted here today, that it's going to be an uphill battle for them to try and generate the types of revenues. $2.4 million. I would guess you look at the bigger players in the game, specifically the online game, the YouTube game that have sports card shops themselves. I think of like the Ryans, the CC2s, Card Collector 2s, and the Burbank sports card shops. Burbank may be a multi-million-dollar venture, but you're talking about a card shop that's been established for many years. Ryan, I think that he commingles a lot of his online presence with the actual shop, and the shop is, we're talking Ryan shop is what, 1,000 square feet, 2,000 square feet maximum. And so, there's just not the same comparisons out there. Burbank's got its own thing. Geoff has certainly apparently spent a lot of time through some of the videos that he's put up with the guys over at Burbank, really trying to understand their business model. Is he going to try and mimic that? It's an uphill battle to try and mimic what Burbank has done as far as the inventory and the online sales. I'm certain that there's pieces of the business model that he'll bring into his, but we'll see. It's very curious to see exactly what we've got going on. I was trying to see what this game score was, but I'm not. It's not showing the score right this moment. So, anyway, that's kind of the thoughts I wanted to share. I hope anybody who happened to check in, even if you just checked in for a few minutes, or if you watch this in the future, this is a bit of me playing around with going live for the very first time, kind of getting familiar with the software, sharing some thoughts on Cards HQ. Yeah, yes, there are conventions and various events and things. Not Collecticon. What's the one that's coming up here in February? Yeah, there's a big one coming up in February that they'll be able to play a little bit off of. But yeah, Culture Collision. That's right. But Culture Collision's a fairly new convention, if I remember right. Like, I don't even have you been by chance to the events? Because I'd be curious. I don't know that even Culture Collision's as big as like what Dallas does from a Dallas card show perspective. They have their trade nights at the card shop. Okay, yeah. Do you have plans, Huddle, to go to kind of opening week or with some of the special events? Will you be attending, being only 10 miles away? So you did attend last year and go this year. I'd be curious, right? Like, there's been rumors that Tops, the Fanatics kind of structure, kind of doing some early release stuff related to flagship Top Series 1 2024. Possibly athletes might be at the store. I'm not sure what they've officially announced. I know that there was some inner circle kind of rumors that there may be athletes that Fanatics were going to get engaged in to try and help kind of promote week one. So it'll be interesting to see what they can get done. And again, I'm all for success in this space. I genuinely want them to be wildly successful. I think it benefits anybody with grand ideas to build, really large baseball card shops in other large cities. It also just helps keep a bit of a positive buzz about the overall sports card market. So anything that you've heard, if you're watching this video kind of after the fact, the picture I was painting wasn't necessarily trying to be negative as much as I struggle with the fact that they're going to be able to be successful with the types of numbers they've shared as far as startup costs. Culture Collision, different than a normal card show. Yeah, it's the whole sneaker thing. It's the whole play on, sneakerheads getting together with sports card folks, maybe some more like apparel type folks that may trying to bring that all into one event. Fairly new to the best of my knowledge. Whether it will be a long-standing thing again, I want the Culture Collision thing to be a long-running thing. Hopefully, a good thing from an Atlanta perspective, but I could also envision a time where the sneakerheads that did come into the hobby during kind of the pandemic boom, they may be gone. The money's been moved away from kind of commingling. So it'd be interesting to see how much longer Culture Collision has. We wish it the best. We want it to be as successful as possible. But last year there were people selling sports themed soaps. Yeah, like it's again, we want it to be successful. It's always cool to bring different segments of the market together. We want that. We want to be able to see kind of new innovative stuff. Where the market goes from here, all of that's a positive thing. Does it have long sustained abilities like the National has, or Dallas Sports Card Show has, or the Midway has, or the Burbank Card Show that Burbank Sports Cards is really trying to throw out there? Does it have the same type of positive momentum that they'll be able to drive? I'm not sure that they do. All right, guys. Well, I wasn't trying to make this a long one. I just wanted to really kind of play with the live version of this, kind of get myself familiarized with it. For anybody who's watching, feel free to leave comments below. I appreciate Huddle for sharing some kind of sentiments, checking and staying with us for most of the live. We're pushing about 30 minutes. I'm going to go jump on the Peloton, get some exercise in, and grab some dinner, and then watch the end of this football game. I wish everybody health in 2024, and hopefully your guys' collections are all coming together. For anybody on the YouTube space, appreciate you guys, and look forward to seeing more great content from anybody who happens to see this that is making content. And with that, I'm just going to wrap this up. Thanks, everybody. We'll chat with everybody later.